Make sure you're quiet, Levi. Here we go. All right, we are officially live. Everybody, welcome to this amazing soul chat discussion with our girl, Nyeesha D. Williams. Before I tell you guys about her, first of all, this is probably our third podcast recording. Our first one ever recorded is the 8 Steps to Forgiveness. The second one she was on is the masks we wear. So I encourage you to listen to all of them. But first and foremost, definitely tap into this one. Today, we're talking about forgiveness. It's a discussion we've been having for years, which I think is so worthy because this is I didn't realize how triggering this topic was for people. I'm always open to hot topics, like, let's talk about it, let's get into it. And I think that's just the desire to always question everything and to have for me at least, have deeper understanding of like, okay, well, maybe I can't apply that right now, but what does that look like for you? And I love your take on it. I love the 8 steps to forgiveness. And with that being said, hi, Levi. With that being said, let me just tell you about our girl, Nyeesha Williams. First of all, let me just say I love her. When I say I love her, y'all, I mean that from the bottom of my heart. She is not only a friend, she is a mentor. She's an amazing, brilliant soul who talks about healing. And as you see her shirt, Healed and Thrive. Y'all know we are all about that healing part and then thriving, because life is bigger than just this healing journey that we are on. So with that being said, let me tell you about Nyeesha. Nyeesha is a alumnus of Renaissance life therapist under Dr. Libby Series. She is a recent Harvard attendee who has achieved professional certifications from the National Institute for Clinical Applications of Behavioral Medicine, mental health, first aid through the National Council for Mental Well-Being, and Question, Persuade, and Refer, which aims to decrease suicidal behavior and save lives. Her excellence in the field has been honored with awards such as the 2018 Best Business Influencer, 2022 Maternal Health Maverick, 2022 Best SEL Coach and Women Leader of the Year honorary award. The city of Long Beach has also gave her a certification of recognition amongst many others. Nyeesha continues to devote her skills to serving women, men, and children. Nyeesha has struggled with feeling isolated and vulnerable, so it's no wonder that she's partnered with founder Sunny Thadani to promote My Robin, a company that empowers educators, students, and families with the skills to achieve their personal growth, potential, and well-being. When Nyeesha isn't working with Serenity and Robin, she volunteers her time as a NAMI helpline specialist, providing support services, resource referrals, and support to thousands of individuals with mental health conditions, their family members and caregivers, mental health providers, and the public. She travels around the country presenting workshops and promoting mental health and healing for women in similar situations to hers. Nyeesha is a cheerleader for women in the same position as she was decades ago. In her role as an author, Nyeesha seeks to create interactive and guided books that help people in her community, especially women, find their way, heal, and thrive, specifically moms. Yes. In order to be happy and grow, Nyeesha believes self-care and self-awareness are essential. She enjoys hiking, meditation, and exploring new places with her family. I feel like I could talk about you all day. I love you dearly. And I always ask, who are you? You know, I feel like we talk so much, you know, just in general. We've been friends for a while. I was trying to think in my mind, has it been 2017? Was that the year? I feel like it was 2017. She's like, you're gonna put me on the spot. I think it was 2017.
I don't know. I think it was before that, because Seven was born in 2016.
Okay.
We connected before, or when he was born. Maybe 2017. Maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe 2017. Yeah. Because that's around Sip and Become time, right?
Say that again.
That's around Sip and Become, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And I was crushing on you, seeing what you were doing with the Sip and Become tour, which, you know, whether you bring it back or not, I know how business goes and some things are just not in alignment. But you've been doing bigger things. But today specifically, I know we could talk about a million things. Today we're talking about forgiveness. So you authored a book called The 8 Steps to Forgiveness, which I wrote the foreword to. Thank you so much for that, gracing me with that privilege. For me, it's just been such a brilliant topic that it took me time, that even when we first talked about the 8 steps to forgiveness, it took me time to integrate it into my own being and really feel it and really like step into like, what does that actually feel like? So I'm thankful that we had that conversation, because I know for you, it was almost like a download you got. If I remember clearly, us before we even talked about it, you were like, I think you were in the airport, right? You were in the airport. Okay, so my memory is good. All right, good. And you were like, hey, I just had this download and this is what we're going to talk about. Because a lot of times with Soul Chat, I try not to, I do. And I also try not to make it this preconditioned topic. This one is, but typically we kind of just go into it and we flow, which I love. So talk about like, where are you in this journey of forgiveness? What is it for you? I am going to read this excerpt that I think sets the tone of I know for me, and I don't want to speak for you, but it is the foundation of how I see forgiveness as something that is necessary, especially in the healing community. And I know it's a deep topic, so let's get into it.
Where am I when it comes to forgiveness?
Yes.
I am still working through forgiveness. There are always times presented to me to go back to step 1 or step 3 or step 5, right? And my everyday life, I may come across an experience or someone that reminds me that I have to go back to these steps, right? When I think that I've eradicated everything and I've gone through steps 1 through step 8 and I'm done, something else happens, right? And it's not that while I'm working through the steps, I have to revisit the relationships that are now severed. I have to reinvent myself. And no, it's just an internal situation that I have to work through, right? Like when I am triggered by an experience, I have to go back to step 2 and ask, am I practicing empathy, right? So where am I on this journey? I am still forgiving and I'm still learning more and I'm still revisiting that download that came at a time when I needed it the most.
We needed it, sis. Okay. And listen, here's the thing. That's the realest shit ever, because I do find myself, I do think I'm profound in the way that I think. I know that. And I find you to be the same way. Like I said to you prior to hitting record, I don't value a lot of opinions. I just don't. I just really don't. I learned wisdom from my grandmother. Also being able to see a grandmother who didn't have wisdom. Like I literally had both. I had one that had wisdom and then I had one who died. I so wish I would have recorded her. And I knew it was a for me thing. And I did record her, like just me going to visit her in the hospital and stuff, but I never recorded. I wanted to actually have a podcast where I just talked to her because I wanted people to see what it looked like for me to be me and to sit with someone who was in their late 80s, who chose not to forgive, who chose to be bitter, who chose to have temper tantrums at her age or talk about when her father died when she was 9. I mean, she was so repetitive. You know how that is when people start to age and then they start just repeating the same things over and over again. And I would sit there and listen to her. And it was a godsend that I was even like talking to her at that time, like the way everything unfolded. But just to sit with someone who didn't have wisdom, was just profound for me at that time, because I was like, wow, like this is why I do what I do. Because to watch someone at her age she was brilliant. She was a nurse. You know what I mean? Like she took care of people and she was a smart woman and taught me a lot of things, but I also got to see her. And then there was my other grandmother who had wisdom, who was calm, who didn't repeat the same things over and over again. Still to this day, she's alive, who taught me a lot of things as well. So I feel like we needed that. We needed what you taught, and to say, as someone who's at the forefront leading healing, to say, yeah, I got to go back to some steps again. And it's crazy that you said that, because last night I was just making coffee. I'm so tired before me and my partner did our couple therapy session. I'm like, I had to make some coffee. As I'm making the coffee, I'm thinking, everyone you meet in life is a repeat of someone you've met. Everyone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Every single person you meet is a repeat, and I'm just shaking my head like, that's a bitch. You know what I'm saying? Like, some of y'all gotta go, right? But that's just the lessons we need to learn,
Right.
So before we get into this deeper, because I have a few things I want to read, something I just posted over on Twitter that I know, a lot of times I feel like I don't want to come for people, but you have it for this specific. I just been seeing it over and over and over again of people saying, you shouldn't forgive. Stop telling people to forgive. I've seen it. I've seen at least 3 major profiles share, stop telling people to forgive because it's not always possible. And I completely do not agree with that. And for me, it's a very simple reason why. Like, it's not complicated, but I don't agree with it. Before I get into it, I want to read something from this book, y'all. So it's called The Couples Therapy Workbook. It's actually created for therapists, for their clients. I found it on Amazon, but anyways, if you got a partner, it's called The Couple Therapy Workbook. I encourage everyone to work through it. So anyways, lo and behold, yesterday we come across our topic of the day, which was apologies and forgiveness. So I'm going to read this because I thought this was the best way that I've heard it broken down as far as like forgiveness and how we can work our mind around it. So in what we think. So tell me if you agree with this or not. So it says, unfortunately, people think that apologizing means that they are admitting that they are inferior and weak, and therefore choose to dig their feet in and dismiss their partner's feelings or the situation. Let's say situation if it's not a relationship. If you take this approach, you will not only hurt your partner and harm the connection in your relationship, I believe you're hurting yourself, essentially. It is important to understand that an apology is not an act of submission, but an act of caring. Taking accountability for your actions or lack thereof, and communicating to your partner that I see you, you were hurt by my actions, and that matters to me, is an incredibly caring gesture that validates your partner's feelings. So it's talking about apologizing. And sometimes we don't get the apology, and we're going to get into that today too. But they also say, in turn, forgiveness requires a decision to let go of resentment and any thought of revenge. You may find this very difficult to do, as you might believe it minimizes the hurt you've experienced, which is where I think most people are. That's where I think most of the planet is. They feel like it minimizes what they've been through.
Right.
It will help you it will help if you can see it instead as a tool to release the grip that hurt and anger have on you so that you can move forward. Hanging on to anger creates resentment in yourself, and it also chips away at the connection you have. If you have a connection with a person and someone you're still in contact with, I personally think if they're not in your life, you're chipping away at yourself energetically. Seeing forgiveness not as a passive acceptance of the hurt you've experienced, but as an active effort to see us all as flawed human beings will allow you to have compassion and hold people accountable. What do you think about that? And what piece stuck out the most for you?
I agree with it 1000%. And what stuck out the most for me is people refusing to forgive because the inferiority aspect of things. Like, if I forgive you, then I'm going to be the one that lost. If I forgive you, then you're going to once again have control over me. If not even realizing that the lack of forgiveness is the control, really. If I forgive you, then you will walk this earth believing that you won and see me as someone that is not strong. Wow. And I refuse to not be strong anymore because I wasn't strong in that particular situation. I think that's why people choose to not forgive.
Wow. And y'all see my mouth when we stop talking to children. Mama bearing it. But this picture is so crazy. It reminds me of you so much. But anyways, Mother Nyeesha. That is so profound. And I shared this with you before. I shared a Facebook post where I shared about talking about forgiving parents and like what that looks like, and how as adults, some people really y'all gotta go back. And y'all gotta let that go. Like they're never gonna be the parents you want. They weren't, and you're an adult now. So, you gotta go back. And that just comes from a space of teaching people about energy. So for me, from that energy standpoint, I just look at life like this. Like if this is you as a vessel, right? You only got so much space. So if you want to put anger, resentment, like, all of those emotions in there, you just don't have space for joy. You don't have space for happiness. You just don't. You know what I mean? And you work on the side where you're diagnosing people with mental illness. And this has just been an aha for me. I'm not a therapist, but growing up in a in a household where people, my parents suffer with bipolar, I needed to understand them in order to make sense of like my own self and how to navigate life with the brain that they were given. Right. So as I began to learn about energy and chakras and stuff, it just, to me, certain things started to click, like, okay, well, if people don't know how to place emotions, which is energy, and they keep piling all this energy on top of each other, eventually, is that possible that might look like someone who's schizophrenic or someone who's bipolar, where there's a split in the psyche where you can no longer, like, you don't know how you feel, you don't know what you feel. And when you're triggered, you're just like on go, you know what I'm saying? And if you know what I mean, like, to me, I just began to see energy as this living, breathing thing of like, okay, we have to be very aware of what we're holding on to, because to me, I think a split like schizophrenic or bipolar, it can happen so easily if we're not paying attention to our pain and how we're holding on to it. That's how I see it from that perspective.
Yeah. I do think that it's important for us to understand that there are some therapists, there are some mental health professionals, some that is led, they have the knowledge and the teachings, but spirit leads them, because they also understand that before therapy became this systemic thing, right, that was not for us, it was led by the ancestors. Therapy is something that we've always had. Therapy is something that was always in our culture. Therapy is something that our ancestors knew it to be a vital aspect of our lives, but it didn't come with the diagnosis. There was, this is how you're processing it. This is the herb that you need to take. This is when you need to sleep. This is when you need to rise. You understand what I'm saying? Everything was connected. And there are some mental health professionals that bring all of that in totality to help with their clients. And that's important for me. So when I hear you say, you were raised by a parent who had bipolar disorder, right? Or some signs of schizophrenia, you got you got your clinical hours, right?
Oh yeah, girl.
Have the license, you may not have the certificate, but you have the life experience. So it was your job and your duty to focus on the energy, because that's an aspect of therapy. That's what we had to understand and learn, right? That's moon, that's sun, that's star, that's spirit, that's mind, that's body, that's soul. All of that come into therapy if you are doing it how it's supposed to be done. So it was important for me to just let me just share that real quick.
Oh my God, that was such a beautiful share. And I think even for you, I know behind the scenes, it's like something you've been breaking down for yourself, because we've always, we just beautifully connect. And I was like thinking about our first conversation. I don't remember everything we talked about, but I remember I was sitting on my couch. I feel like, damn, I can't remember all of it. I know I was sitting on my couch and you were like, take my number. We had this conversation. You kind of just like paused where you could be like, I like her. And you like, you know what? Take my number. Like, take my actual number. I think you had given me a Google number or something, which cracks me up. But that's life, right? You got to kind of vet people. You got to vet people out, right? Especially with social media. So you know, just for me on my end, we've always just really connected. But for me, it's just like I could just see it. And I know you're like that too, where I could just see things and people. You could just see the energy. I could see energy flowing through people. I can just see it and feel it, like almost like I could touch it. Right? So I don't always agree with, you know, even my mom to this day, she still takes medicines for different things. I just be looking at her like, you know, that's her own depth of understanding and acceptance, right? Because I believe you can't heal if you don't believe you can heal that way. Right. So if you tell people, like we be telling people, y'all should journal. And a lot of people just roll their eyes. I just don't like writing. That's nice. So hold on to that then. That's my perspective with
the same ones that refuse to journal are the same ones that say, it feels like there's a weight over me. It feels like something so heavy. I can't unpack the baggage. Sis, bro, you're unpacking in its most simplest state is the journaling.
It is.
You are chipping away the weight. Imagine if you can chip away the weight in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening, every single day. And then not only you chip away this weight, but you can go back to how many pounds there was and say like, oh, okay, so yeah, this doesn't serve me, this doesn't look right, this doesn't sound right, this doesn't act right. I know not to carry that again.
Yeah.
Releasing and being solution-based. And you do that every single day, baby, you're gonna be as thin as whomever, right? And I know, give me 1 minute, I'm sorry, yes.
That was so profound. So y'all know we be mama bearing it. And that's the beautiful thing about momming in business, is that it doesn't have to look perfect. So if you're out there watching this, show up for yourself and do it anyways, okay, with the babies. If you're new and you're just tuning in, I'm not sure who's on YouTube or listening to the podcast, we are talking about forgiveness. And definitely make sure you leave your comments or feedback on my last Instagram post and let us know. Take the poll, DM me, let me know what you think about forgiveness. But back to you, Nyeesha.
Yes, you know, there were times when I used to feel so bad about being a mother while being a business owner. Like in the very, very beginning, like, oh my God, what if, you know, my children come and they interfere and then they want to do da-da-da-da. And it feels so good to be unapologetically a mother, right? Like, oh, you take me and all of me, right? So if I need to pause and break, you're going to have to take this pause and break and respect this pause and break. And then I'll be right back, right? But there was so much guilt with that. There was so much guilt. So for me, when we're talking about the weight, and I can't wait to touch on what forgiveness is not and what forgiveness is, and the effects of choosing to forgive, not just on an emotional standpoint, but on the physical as well. I was holding on to a lot of baggage, and it showed up with how I responded to myself, how I responded to others emotionally. But then there's the physical aspect where you can see that I was holding on to baggage, right? Whether it was bags under my eyes, whether it was skin, whether it was me visiting the hospital every week, whether it was me being overweight, like extremely overweight, like you can see it. For some, it's the normal, right? Like, oh, okay, this is just who Nyeesha is. But the moment I started to truly like unpack and release and let go and understand, literal weight was coming off of my body. Like I was starting to lose weight. So that's one of the reasons why it's so important for us to talk about this particular topic, forgiveness, because this is mind, body, and soul. It's not just what's going on emotionally. It's not just what's going on psychologically. Like you see the changes physically as well. So yeah.
Ooh, I can't wait to get into that too. Before we do, I do want to read this post that kind of sparked. I mean, I think I actually seen it along the way of having to show up to this. And I'm like, you know, God just really needs us to break this down. Do you need something, love? So back to your point too about being unapologetic as a mom, as you were pausing, I was like, listen, if y'all are out there and y'all are in business and you are a parent, like just show up and be unapologetic about how you do it. So this was the post. It was by Nate Post, I don't know how to say his last name, Postal Wait or something like that. And he said, stop telling people they are hanging on to their anger by not forgiving when their anger is the only honest part of the situation. I found that shit, first of all, it was a thread. So there was more to it. I found that so toxic. I really did. Because I feel like, to me, you put it so beautiful. It's this shit is real simple. It's simple. Like I showed you the bottle of water. That's how simple it is. You are a vessel. You are a vessel. You just broke it down so beautifully, mind, body, spirit. So when you release things, you start to release the weight, right? This is why you think why people can't lose weight, because it's not the weight. It's not the weight. You can learn all the things you need to learn. They tell you it starts in the kitchen, but guess what? When you're emotionally triggered, and if that's been your way of coping, for some people, it's not even an emotional trigger of negativity. Sometimes you just feel really good and you like, I'm gonna go eat. It's not even the negative thing. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, there's so many components to healing that I really wish people would simplify it. And one of the things I've been standing on in the past year plus is that healing is easy. And it was something that I had to verbally tell myself out loud. It was something that I learned by sitting with people who were interested in 7 Days of Clarity, sitting with the hundreds of people who went through 7 Days of Clarity, and sitting there. And I started to really, like, it just heightened my sense of awareness with energy. And I could tell when someone wasn't going to go through 7 Days of Clarity by their language and how they would talk about it, right? Or how they would talk about their problem or the clarity that they really want. I'm like, you don't really want it. You don't really want it. You want to stay in pain. You want to be there.
That part.
Right. So to hear someone who is a psychologist or a therapist share with people, and this is not the first one, I've seen 2 other big pages share the same thing, like, and they're saying forgiveness is not always possible. And I find that to be so toxic, because it is an emotion, it is a thing. And my question is, it's a thing that you're holding on to, it holds a weight to it, a physical weight that is energetically felt in your spirit. Levi. So if you choose not to let it go, then you're choosing to hold on to something else. So you have to understand there's a give or take of it. So if I hold on to this, then I can't have that. It's just very simple.
And right? Also, right. Yes, you're right. It is very simple. And to the point of these large pages and these psychologists or these clinicians or therapists that are saying it, it reminds me of like your pastor. People are going to church. The pastor is supposed to be the vessel to God. And then when the pastor be messing with sis on that's next to the pulpit, people are like, how dare you? God is not. And it's
that's
like,
hard.
It's a human. She is a human being, right? Living with their own experiences, but it's just being used to preach the gospel or the word or to teach you. So when these main pages or psychologists or clinicians or therapists or whatever you want to call them or psychiatrists speak, like, you cannot forgive. Forgiveness is not simple. Anger is the most honest emotion. It immediately makes me think like, there's a human. There is the human. They have their own shit that they're going through.
That part.
If we take the time to focus on the somatic aspects of life, like changing and what that looks like energetically, and not correlating avoidance with forgiveness, so much can change. I believe these same people that are saying that forgiveness is not simple or it does not have to happen are the same people that would change what they say if they truly embody forgiveness.
That part.
Like,
wow. Yeah, I love how you just broke that down. That's so true. That's so true. That's so true. And that was something I was thinking this morning, where I thought, if you haven't met yourself at that depth, right? They always say people will meet you at the depth that they can meet themselves. right? To me, that's forgiveness. And I personally, for me, I just admitted, you know, when we first were talking about it, and you were like, oh, there's these 8 steps, and there's one, there's this, and there's this, and there's empathy. And I was like, whoa, girl, empathy, it ain't in me right now. I don't care. And I love the 8 steps because it gave me perspective of like frames of thought to walk myself through. And I could, like you said, sometimes you got to go back and be like, okay, well, with this situation, I don't have empathy. Or with this situation, I'm not putting myself in nobody's shoes, because, you know, a lot of us have this perspective, well, I wouldn't have done that. Right. And we stand firm on that. And I'm a firm, I wouldn't have done that type of person. I'm Capricorn, so I'm the goat. I'm not moving. And I'm firm in that I wouldn't have done that. And I've learned how to relax in that. And you said something so beautiful, and see the human. Right? Like I literally just told my partner yesterday, as we had this discussion on forgiveness and I got to see his perspective, I said, at the end of the day, when this person leaves the earth, they are a light being. They're a light being. They're going to return to the light. Like however you want to process this, and how people want to process hell and heaven. And, you know, I think we just fight to be right a lot of times. And in our fight to be right, we're too willing as a culture to hold on to pain.
Here's the extra work that people don't want to do when it comes to the tap into empathy step. That extra step that people will not take when it comes into empathy. You said, I don't want to step into anyone's shoes. I wouldn't do that, right? Here's the extra part. But what if you did? But what if you did do that? See, people are afraid to step into the shoe because they are afraid to see the version of themselves that they avoid. See, this shit looks too much like me, or I don't want to see myself if I was that type of person. So I'm going to say I'm not stepping into anyone's shoe. Because what happens when you step into someone's shoe, or when you tap into empathy, you see all the elements of yourself that you refuse to look at because you are not in that situation.
Yeah.
But those same elements still show up in other versions of your life, but you don't want to see that yet. You can't see that yet. So I will never do that. So I'm not about to tap into empathy. But sis, what if you did? Tell me, what if you did choose to do exactly what that person did? Even if you will not treat someone the way that they're treating you, I still want you to tap in and tell me, how would you do things differently? What would you have said differently? And it's important for you to be able to say, I would have done it this way instead, because that I would have done it this way instead is also going to help you with the process of forgiveness.
Absolutely.
Because now you know how to set boundaries. And there's another step. You understand what I'm saying? Of forgiveness. So it's so important for you to actually do every single step. And empathy is one of the most important.
It is. It is. And that's so profound that you said that, because once I did do that, and I did step in their shoes. And for me, it's, you know, I love my meditation as a meditation guide. And I would sit there and I would be them. And I would think through their thinking. And then it would just lead me to a space of, wow, like only when we're willing to go that deep into the ocean, which, you know, if y'all know, literally, we haven't even discovered half of what's in the ocean. So think about how deep we're willing to meet ourselves. I think everything is a representation of everything, right? So when I would go to those spaces, it would just bring such a depth of like, where I literally feel bad for that person. That's where it would lead me, where I feel so bad for them. And I can now see their pain, that they're in so much pain, that their responses look like this, that their actions look like this, that their being looks like this. You know what I'm saying? So you have one of those steps where I think where people also find it difficult, specifically, let's talk about family, because there's so many situations and we can't get into all of them right now, that when it comes to family, we have more of a filter of I should, I must, I'm this person's daughter, so I should forgive them, or I should take their phone calls, or I must and I mustn't do this, and I think those are the filters we have to remove in order to fully step into forgiveness, because sometimes you're violating your own self by not creating the boundaries, which is obviously one of those steps. So I know we can't get into boundaries today because I think that's a whole nother topic, that we could talk about, but I really want to just stay tuned into the forgiveness of it. And when you talked about empathy and me being able to even dive into empathy, I began to see, wow, like, damn, this person must be so hurt, so deeply hurt. And you don't know everyone's story. You really don't need to, because you can see it play out in their ways, right? That they're hurting.
The step of tapping into empathy is what led me to forgive one of my assailants. So we're talking rape, because when we think about forgiveness, that is something that comes to mind, right? Like, how could you forgive your rapist? How can you forgive someone who sexually assaulted you? How can you forgive someone that murdered and I get that, right? It'll take forever to expound on that, but I just want to talk about my particular experience. I was so angry, rightfully so, right? That honest emotion, the anger, very angry. How could you do this? My body wasn't even mature. I was a little girl, very unaware of the makings of anything. I didn't understand sex. I didn't know what sex was. I wasn't kissing anyone, putting a tongue down somebody. I didn't understand. And you took advantage of me, right? You took advantage of someone because you couldn't meet someone that was your age or meet someone that was on your level. And then I started tapping into empathy, like, damn, what if this happened to him? And that is the only language he understands.
Right.
Because most times people who assault have been assaulted. Exactly. So he probably was coming to me doing this, and that was probably his sign of affection. Or manipulation is the only language that was taught to him at home. Or his anger and his sadness and his pain only allowed him to do this because he didn't know how to embrace love, joy, and happiness, right? So rage was the only emotion that he knew, so that was the only emotion he could give me. So just tapping into empathy allowed me to transport myself, because our emotions are portals, right? To transport myself into his world and see the little boy in him that was crying out when he did it. And my ability to see all of his darkness made me feel bad and sad and empathetic. And there was there was no other way you could be but this, right? And then understanding that, it allowed me to let go of, I'm so mad at you. And it's like, okay, I understand you, but now I gotta let you go and what you did, because you didn't do it to me. Like, Nyeesha is not broken forever because of this. It could have been anyone, right? Mm-hmm. It could have been anyone. And along with all the other 7, that's why I think empathy is so important. And that's what led me to my process of forgiveness, is because I was so angry at every single person who did something. When I didn't allow myself to see them for who they genuinely were or how they could genuinely be, so I can let that go. And you touched on family, right? Mm-hmm. My biggest thing when it comes to forgiveness and family is we hold the title. We dangle the title in front of our inability to forgive.
Always.
Mother, father, sister, brother, cousin, aunt, uncle, whatever you choose. For me, I'll say mother. It was so difficult for me to forgive my mother at certain stages in my life because the dangling of the title mother. Mm-hmm. Because when we see the title, we have expectations that come right along, like they come right through, right? As soon as you see the title, there's the expectation. So she's my mother. How could she do? As my mother, she's supposed to do X, Y, and Z, whether it's something I seen on TV, whether it's something that I heard, whether it's something I'm comparing myself to, whether it's something that I read. And the moment I decided to remove the title of mother was the moment I was able to see this woman for who she was.
Exactly.
Because now the blinder of the title is removed and I can just see clearly on, okay, so if she was not my mother, would I allow myself to be in a relationship with a woman like this? If I wouldn't allow myself to be in a relationship with a woman like this, why am I allowing it just because of the sake of the title?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's forgiveness is something that we can talk about forever and a day.
It is. It
Forever
really is.
and a day.
It really is. As you're talking, my thoughts are just like boop, 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 boop of just situations, people, places, things, because that what you just said, that's huge. And I think for most people, that's going to create a lot of freedom for them, is that you are literally creating, you have rose colored glasses on because of your perception of how someone should have showed up for you,
right,
what they were supposed to do, who they were. And I think a portion of it to me that I really took into account last year, which is fam, okay? A lot of people have always been who they've been. So the fact that you've given them these obligations and expectations that they never even lived up to is a you thing, right? You and I can both agree. Was your mother ever, like, as a child, did she ever show up in that nurturing capacity that is memorable? You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, it's important for me to say it like this because this is also what kept me in bondage for so long. My mother is a very loving woman. She's a very nurturing woman. May not be the love and nurture that I needed, but she was that woman. Here's the thing that kept me in bondage. My mother provided me with love and nurturing, but it was at the hand of conflict. So, yes, I experienced love and I experienced nurture, but I also either before or after experienced the wrath.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, has your mother always been, or was she? Yeah, the younger version of me would be like, yes, that's why I was hurting so much, because she always did this.
Yeah.
Without or refusing to look at, but at what cost?
Yes. Yeah.
What came before that? Before she gave me a hug or gave me a toy or gave me an outfit or gave me some attention or gave me some love. Before that, I was a bitch. Before that, I was a hoe before I was even having sex.
Yes.
Before that, me being double jointed in my legs was me calling out for men to get attention. I don't have control over my body, Mom. You understand what I'm saying? So it's important for us when we ask those questions like, well, was they always this? That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Because it really calls for you to look at them incomplete, right? Like, yeah, she was that, but at what cost? So do you want to go through that cost? Do you want to go through the pain before pleasure? Can you not experience love and joy without hurt and pain? Right? So my mother, to really answer your question, as the woman I am today, my mother has not changed.
Yeah.
She has always been the person that she is.
Yeah.
I just refuse to see a version of her because that was my mother.
Yeah. That part. You said so much, and you made me really just think of a space I've been in general, as far as we heal, to realize those patterns of love with conditions. And, that's why I think if you look at the quote that I shared yesterday, which was from MLK, I found on Oprah's website, she'd be having all the plugs. It said, we must develop and maintain the capacity to forgive. He who is devoid of the capacity to forgive is devoid of the capacity to love. And I think, unfortunately, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I want to move forward. I think, to me, when you talked about, like, empathy, to me is a word of love that goes into the love bucket. And I think I've shared this with you, how I think of forgiveness and love and many other words. I think those are the two biggest ones, culturally, spiritually, that most of us have a hard time working around without some sort of condition, right? I could forgive this person, but I can't forgive that. There's a condition there. I could love this person, but I can't love them if they do this, right? So to me, it's like love, when you reach empathy, it's like a deeper understanding of, like, it's not about me. And not only is it not about me, I'm going to stop making it a part of my story and identity. You know what I mean? So as you talked about that, just like your mom, and even when I look at my mom, like, I think of, I say it was the same story. And I think many people have that same story of how our parents loved on us, whereas, like, really unpacking all of that and seeing them for the good that they are, but not putting on a filter, because I've had to have a conversation with my mother 3 years ago where I said, listen, like, please hear my heart right now. And for me, it took time to even learn how to speak at that level to where someone could hear me and not just my hurt. Because when people only hear your hurt, they don't hear you. I've learned that. They don't, and they won't hear you, because now it'll be a battle of who's hurt more. So I really just met her at a heart level. And I said, listen, I'm willing to never talk to you again. And if that brings me peace, because I practice peace and I see that you don't, then I'm going to be okay with it. I want to let you know that face to face. And I know it hurts you to hear me say that, but I really want you to think what I bring into your life. And I really want you to think about what you bring into my life. And a lot of times it's chaos. And at this point, as an adult, it feels abusive. And because I can choose, I'm not going to tolerate that for me or my children and the next generation that's watching. So you make a choice and you got to do your work. And she's done the work. I mean, my mother meditating and, like, being on Clubhouse, listening to self-love rooms is, like, unheard of 3-4 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, for her to have done the work and is doing the work, is she still who she is to a degree? Yes. But the boundaries that we have set, there's certain things that don't happen anymore, because I've had to have that conversation. And it's a win. To me, that's a win. Could I have that conversation with my father? He's still doing crack on the streets of Philly, y'all. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, listen, but I've had that conversation with him too. And I don't talk to him, but I've created that boundary with love. I have empathy for him. I understand. I forgive him for who he was as a father, like, wholeheartedly. But I also know he's way too toxic to be in my life. Way too toxic. It would cross over into lanes that, to me, I feel like as an adult, keep perpetrating the abuse, right? And we get to choose. So I want you to talk about, as we get ready to end this shortly, what does forgiveness look like? What is it? What isn't it? And how does it show up in ways that I think culturally, and I think we're speaking to people's spirits today. I don't want this to be a therapy discussion. I guess it is from that word, but I don't want it to be like this clinical discussion. I think you are a spiritually sound woman. And the depth of wisdom that you bring is beyond what you could have ever read in a book. Because, like you said, you got your clinical hours too, sis. Way before the clinical hours. Right. Talk about it.
So I want to share this quote real quick. Excuse me. It's from Clarissa Pinkola. It's this. I mean, I love her. The woman who run wild with the wolves, the author. I love her.
Yes.
She touches on forgiveness. She says, how does one know if she has forgiven? You tend to feel sorrow over the circumstance instead of rage. You tend to feel sorry for the person rather than angry with him. You tend to have nothing left to say about it all.
Damn.
I'm not sure how much else you want me to share when it comes to my thoughts on forgiveness outside of this. Because when I hear this I hear freedom. I hear acceptance. I hear understanding. I hear the relinquish of anger and rage. And yes, anger is an honest emotion, but just because it's honest doesn't mean that you have to hold on to it forever. There are other honest emotions.
Mm-hmm.
There are other honest emotions that can show up to not remove the anger as if it never existed, but to now hold the place for anger because it does no longer need to be there. So when we talk about looking over the circumstance, and instead of rage, you tend to feel sorry, that's that empathy, right? Like, damn, I feel sorry, not even just for the other person, because we have to forgive ourselves too in circumstances and situations. Damn, I feel sorry for that version of me that didn't understand how to show up for her in that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel sorry for a lot of versions that are in the workings of shedding. And now that they can shed, what does this newfound version of me, the replacing of anger and joy, right? Or anger and happiness, rage and rest, what does that newfound version of me look like? And if you can say what a newfound version of you looks like, you can forgive. You can forgive. If you can say, I will be so happy if I was ... If you have the ability to have foresight or vision on a better version of you, that means that you are capable of doing all of the work to get there. And that includes forgiveness.
Absolutely. Could you read that again for the people?
If you have the ability or capability to have foresight and vision to see the better version of you, you have the ability and capability to forgive. If you see yourself happy and joyful and lighter and fulfilled and successful, you can see yourself chipping and removing and releasing and letting go. Because there's no way in hell you're going to get to your vision without doing that work. But the beauty of it all is it's possible. And we have to be mindful. In closing, I'll say we have to be mindful that when we are talking about honest emotions are not just negative emotions.
There's a full spectrum.
And there's a full fucking spectrum of honest emotions.
There are. And this is the thing, in short, I do want to quickly say that I do believe people can reach success and a vision carrying a lot of weight. Right? And I think this is why we see so much things in Hollywood where people are like, oh my God, like, I can't believe that person did it. I think sometimes in the healing industry, we do kind of sell that point of view where it's like, reach your fulfilled vision and you can't get there until and it's 11:11. You can't get there until you ... And I believe over time, I've been able to see, well, people actually do get there and people do reach a level of success. But to me, I've been at spaces, and I'm not sure if you could resonate with this, where I was doing all the things I wanted to do. I was hosting. It was a point where I remember hosting events, and just like after every event, I was so unfulfilled. And I would just sit there and be like, okay, but I'm not happy. I'm not, joyful.
So we talk about healing being nonlinear, right? And I think that we can say the same for success. We have different versions of success based off of the different versions of us. So when we talk about having sold out workshops and best-selling books and living in gated communities and having multiple cars. Yeah, that's successful for that person who wanted to obtain that money.
Yeah.
But when you feel unfulfilled when all of that is done, that's because that version of you wants another version of success.
Yeah.
So I could have had all of the glitz and glamour, but I wasn't fucking happy in my relationship.
Yeah.
That's not successful to me.
Mm-hmm.
I can have all the money in my bank account, but my children are sick. That's not successful to me. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? So for me and for you and for us, when we say vision and foresight of a better version of us, we have to be honest of what that version is. What does success look like for you? Mm-hmm. If you are losing weight and then you lose a pound, you are being successful. You have succeeded. You understand what I'm saying?
I do. No, wholeheartedly. I agree. Listen, I agree with all of that. I think essentially we do live in a world that promotes success, the word in itself, with the visual, right? Mm-hmm. If we put 100 people in a room, 90% of those people would have the same visual.
Money.
Right. Everything that you just listed, all the things, right? The things, which essentially, I'm reading a book called The Science of Getting Rich, which, it proclaims, which I do agree with, it is right and natural to be rich. Right. However, we do need to understand that, rich is a philosophy and not a visual, right? It's rich in spirit, rich in love, rich in forgiveness, rich in happiness, rich in joy, rich in like all the things that we need to be fucking beings. Right. Something I read earlier today, these are books that I just keep picking up, right? You're a Badass. Mm-hmm. She talked about, when you're a baby, right? He doesn't know he has a body. He doesn't know he's in a body. He just know he's being. You see, it said you're a toddler. You see something on the floor, you pick it up. You see something that looks like you could put in your mouth, you put it in your mouth, right? You're just a being. Right. But I think when we live in a culture that has given us all these visuals, right, that we can't compute that into being.
Right.
So when we talk about forgiveness, we talk about success, we talk about love, everybody has a visual of what that should be. And it's not a visual, because at the end of the day, we're human beings and we're spirits, holy spirits in a body. And realistically, you cannot hold on to being unforgiving and joy. The two don't they can't, it's like oil and water. They don't cohabitate.
Talk about it.
They just don't.
Right.
And when people are like, well, what do you mean? You feel it. I mean, I don't have to describe to you what you feel.
Right.
Like it's a feeling that we all feel.
And I want to be very clear. Every single thing that you'll put on your vision board, you can obtain. So if that's money, cars, clothes, and all of that, you can get that.
Absolutely.
But here's where we mess up. When we look at everybody else's shit and be like, I want that success. Mm-hmm. I want what she has or what he has. I want those clothes because those clothes is going to make me feel, or it's going to bring me in this room. I want those cars because if I had those cars, what? People are going to see me as. Baby, live as people are, how you want people to see you. Walk in rooms like you got that outfit on. Mm-hmm. When you talk about money, heck yeah, I understand what happens if you're poor. I've been there, right? Sometimes I still be like, damn, am I there? I get it. But what does that correlate to? Like, we have to understand that these are just things. What we really want is to feel. Yeah. We think these things are going to make us feel when we can feel before obtaining those things.
Yeah, exactly. So that circles back to forgiveness. Let's circle that theory back to forgiveness as we close this out and go be mamas and all the things that we are. Forgiveness, right? We talk about manifestation. A lot of y'all, a lot of people, manifestation courses are booming. And to me, I look at it, and before I even teach manifestation, I always share with everyone listening. You just said it. You have to feel the thing before you obtain the thing, which is why I love meditation, because beyond meditation and the beautiful visuals you have behind you about the brain, right? your brain literally believes whatever you tell it. How many times you sit there, I remember being on a bus, imagining that bus getting in a car crash, and I start looking at the exits, think about where I'm gonna leave. Right? We all do it. We all literally do it. You're in the movie theater, right? You looking around, checking the exits first. You're pre-planning a scenario that has not happened.
Girl, you walk into the restaurant and you like, yeah, I need to sit my chair this way because
right. Face the door. Right? Trauma, how trauma affects the brain, y'all. Zoom into that behind it. So essentially, we're always doing it. So we have the capacity to understand that that's very simple. Why can't you talk your brain into forgiveness? Why can't you take moments where you're like, wow, let me visually step into someone's shoes, and it could be done, and see, you get to see. That's how brilliant the mind is. We're all connected, right? Someone shared in a room the other day, alone, if you break it down, you separate the words, it's all as one. So stop thinking your shit is individual. Stop thinking your pain is like some shit you only carry and there's billions of people on the planet, right? And truly enough, I've learned this as a young person. If you knew half the shoes other people walked in, you'd keep your own. And then you would really look at the pain you've experienced as so minimal, right? So it's like, essentially, if we can manifest other things, we're talking about the things, the cars, the clothes, all the shit,
right?
You really think it's impossible to manifest forgiveness? Why can't we take that same concept and step into practices that will help us get it? You don't want to meditate? Fine. And to me, it's like, people got to stop saying what they can't do.
Right.
It's processes and things that are free. Journaling is free for the most part. I mean, if it's not free, the Dollar Tree, which is now $1.25, $1. Go get, if you don't have $1.25, DM me, okay? We will get you a pen and a notebook.
Right.
Like, we need to start a campaign where we get folks pens and notebooks. These are simple processes that I've done since I was young that I didn't know I was even doing, that have helped me be who I am today. Because of like what you said, I could go back as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old dating an abusive person and read poems I had written, like, really?
Right.
It's like, it makes you feel like,
right.
It's a different perspective when you see what you've written. And I just shared today, I don't believe you can jump just to forgiveness. I believe you have to process it first. So if you're still feeling angry, process it. Well, how do you do it? You don't call that person and tell them how angry you are. Because like I said, I've learned when you speak with emotion and pain, nobody hears you.
Right.
You got to speak with heart, which is it's a less of a filter and it's felt. So process it on a piece of paper. Write it all out. The cuss words, the nasty things you want to say, because you want to say them anyways. You're thinking them anyways.
Right.
And there's so many different things. If y'all want to book some sessions with either her or myself, that'll be something that you could absolutely do. But however, this is a process that I think people can work through, and it is possible. And I felt that. For me, it's that release of what you said, what you read from that woman, is like, I don't feel the need to talk about things anymore. I don't feel the need to throw daggers. I don't feel the need to even just feel it on my chest anymore. There's like literally a feeling that leaves you when have stepped into that space of forgiveness, which is why I'm such an advocate of it. And I do think it's possible because everyone's holding on to something that someone did to them. And it could be a small thing. Right. So to me, it's like, well, what do you want to hold on to? If that works for you, I don't fight with people no more. That's fine. Hold on to that shit. Then I'm gonna be over here in joy and happiness and peace. So when you're ready to come over here, that's where I'll be.
Right. And then I get to decide if I want you there or not.
That too. Well, I'm telling you, that's a small door, y'all. It's like Alice in Wonderland. You better take that little pill if you want to be coming through my door. It's a tiny door, okay?
That part. No, this was great.
It is always great. Tell us where we can stalk you, please.
Oh, man. So every social media platform, I have the same handle. It is Nyeesha D. So that's NYEESHA and D for dynamic. And my website is NyeeshaWilliams.com. We do have I say we, because I always try to, it's important for me to include you because you are the reason why we're here. Forgiveness course mastermind coming up May 7th. So I would love to just like chat and talk about that more in the near future. But yes, Nyeesha D, all social media platforms, NyeeshaWilliams.com. Sending you all the love. Thank you so much, Ebony, for once again taking me out of my comfort zone to speak about this topic.
Listen, thank you. I think this is anything that makes you sweat a little bit to me is worthy of discussion.
Right.
So I feel like the more we all learn and grow and heal and thrive, that thrive part is so important for me. Because you cannot thrive. Thriving is a state of just joy, whether you got $1 or $1 million, you're thriving, right? It's not a thing. It's not a thing. It's a feeling. Like I feel rich. I just feel abundant. I feel amazing. I feel happy. I feel joyful. Why? Because I do, right? And to me, and you could probably agree, when you come from trauma, that perspective shift to now see that other side and feel it is like, we ain't going that way.
Never.
Right? So if I have to forgive, I'm gonna forgive. If I have to let go, I have to let go. If whatever I have to do, I'm gonna do that because I know that the result is so worth it. And I think in the quote I read a quote that said, forgiveness is bitter, but the result is sweet.
Ooh.
Right? And I believe if we can understand the depth of where we need to call ourselves, and I pray that everyone gets that, get the depth of where you need to go. And if you're someone who you need to forgive yourself and you're turning that anger and all that inward, it's the same process.
Right.
It's the same process. Don't make it difficult, right? Don't make it difficult because you want to hold on to things and thoughts and perspectives. So I thank you. I thank you for being who you be.
You're very welcome. I promise you, this is going to be the last thing I say to my moms or future moms. We talk so much about breaking generational curses. We talk so much about us being what sets the tone for our future family, our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and what that looks like. We speak about not wanting to continue with the baggage of the past. Healing through forgiveness or using forgiveness is so important because when we speak on epigenetics, that is how you break the curse. That is how you set the tone for your future. The act of forgiveness is not just helping you emotionally and physically, but on a scientific level, your genetic code shifts when you choose to let go and move with love through forgiveness. So if you want your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and you want to set the tone for your future family, start with yourself through the act of forgiveness so you can change the genial code in your womb so you can give your children what they are deserving of to break that curse.
So deep. It's so deep, but I feel like we could dive into that. My mind is always going. I promise y'all, maybe one day I'll be a scientist because I have so many plans in my mind of just things we could create to help people see that, feel that, touch it, and understand this is real. This is real stuff. Easy. Let's speak about it being easy. And just because you feel deep emotions doesn't make it hard. Last thing I will say is for everyone listening, if you ever think something is hard, especially when it comes to healing, what I've computed it as, especially with 7 days of clarity, I'm telling you, my heightened sense of what words really mean is so deep because I kept hearing the same words over and over again. Hard is heart. Hard is heart. So if it's hard for you, it's because you need to be more brave. You need to be more courageous. You need to be more loving towards yourself and others. It's just bringing more heart. Bring in more heart. We have closed our heart. to be able to do this thing that we're talking about when it comes to healing. So it's not hard. It just needs a little more heart. And that's how I see it, where I'm like, okay, open your heart, sister, you know? So thank you so much, Nyeesha. Y'all know, definitely make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. But beyond that, those of you listening to it on the podcast, thank you for listening. Your form of payment is sharing it with people. You just never know who needs to hear it. Maybe you need to send it to the people you need to forgive, honestly. And always shout out to California, shout out to New York, shout out to New Jersey, shout out to all the people that tap into the podcast all the time. I see the numbers, I watch the numbers, and I appreciate you all. Oh, Texas too, shout out to Texas and Florida. Thank you all so much. And all of those all over in other countries. I see you guys picking up the podcast as well. Nyeesha, it's always been real. It's always been real. Thank you for who you be and how you show up to the world. And everyone listening, have a blessed and amazing day.